Good afternoon. Today I get to say something that brings me tremendous happiness. President Biden, Vice President Harris, welcome to the State Department. For more than 2 decades, I've had the privilege of watching President Biden at work. His commitment to the American people, his expertise in foreign policy, his steadfast belief in diplomacy, and his rock-solid support for our diplomats and development experts. I've seen him on the Hill, in the Oval Office, in distant world capitals from Baghdad to Bagram, Paris to Peoria, and visiting our troops, visiting our diplomats, visiting all the men and women representing this country. And I can say without fear of contradiction that in the history of the presidency, no one has brought as much foreign policy experience to the job as Joe Biden. Wherever he goes, he's been a champion for American leadership and a defender of American values. And in Kamala Harris, he has a vice president, we have a vice president, with a long track record of standing up for the security of the American people, and an abiding commitment to using diplomacy to advance our interests and defend our values around the world. At this moment of unprecedented global challenge, it's more important than ever that the United States show up and lead, because the world simply doesn't organize itself to solve big problems, and the well-being of the American people hangs in the balance. We need diplomacy to get the pandemic under control worldwide, to save American lives and livelihoods. We need diplomacy to address the climate crisis, to protect communities across our country. We need diplomacy to check the rise of authoritarianism, to prevent the spread of dangerous weapons, to shore up democracy, to defend human rights, all of which makes the world more stable and free, and all of which protects the security and prosperity of the American people. Foreign policy is domestic policy. And because our strength at home determines our strength in the world, domestic policy is foreign policy too. President Biden and Vice President Harris know this better than anyone. That's why they believe so strongly in the work that we do at the State Department. And they've made it clear that the first question we must ask ourselves here at State is, how will this benefit our fellow Americans?
Championing opportunity, upholding universal rights, respecting the rule of law, and treating every person with dignity. That's the grounding wire of our global policy, our global power. That's our inexhaustible source of strength. That's America's abiding advantage. Though many of these values have come under intense pressure in recent years, even pushed to the brink in the last few weeks, the American people are going to emerge from this moment stronger, more determined, and better equipped to unite the world in fighting to defend democracy, because we have fought for it ourselves. Over the past few days, we've been in close cooperation with our allies and partners to bring together the international community to address the military coup in Burma. I've also been in touch with Leader McConnell to discuss our shared concerns about the situation in Burma, and we are united in our resolve. There can be no doubt, in a democracy, force should never seek to overrule the will of the people or attempt to erase the outcome of a credible election. The Burmese military should relinquish power they have seized, release the advocates and activists and officials they have detained, lift the restrictions on telecommunications, and refrain from violence. As I said earlier this week, we will work with our partners to support restoration of democracy and the rule of law and impose consequences on those responsible. Over the past 2 weeks, I've spoken with the leaders of many of our closest friends: Canada, Mexico, the UK, Germany, France, NATO, Japan, South Korea, Australia, to reforming the habits of cooperation and rebuilding the muscle of democratic alliances that have atrophied over the past few years of neglect and, I would argue, abuse. America and alliances are our greatest asset. And leading with diplomacy means standing shoulder to shoulder with our allies and key partners once again. By leading with diplomacy, we must also meet and our competitors diplomatically, where it's in our interest, and advance the security of the American people. That's why yesterday the United States and Russia agreed to extend the New START treaty for 5 years to preserve the only remaining treaty between our countries safeguarding nuclear stability. At the same time, I made it clear to President Putin, in a manner very different from my predecessor, that the days of the United States rolling over in the face of Russia's aggressive actions, interfering with our elections, cyber attacks, poisoning its citizens, are over. We will not hesitate to raise the cost on Russia and defend our vital interest and our people. And we will be more effective in dealing with Russia when we work in coalition and coordination with other like-minded partners. The politically motivated jailing of Alexei Navalny and the Russian efforts to suppress freedom of expression and peaceful assembly are a matter of deep concern to us and the international community. Mr. Navalny, like all Russian citizens, is entitled to his rights under the Russian Constitution. He's been targeted for exposing corruption. He should be released immediately and without condition. We'll also take on directly the challenges posed by our prosperity, security, and democratic values by our most serious competitor.